Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar. This file is from justice.gov. It's an actual file in the Epstein files drop that had occurred. And to show you guys how sloppy of a government job we're dealing with, a shitty government cover-up, this is a redacted section, lines 203 all the way to 206. Now how do you unredact certain lines? What if I told you this stuff was so improperly redacted that a boy like me can just highlight all of this text, right-click, hit copy, open up a text editor on my computer, and right here, paste it for anybody to read. Remember lines 203 that are all blacked out right here? Well, it turns out line 203 said, defendants also attempted to conceal their criminal trafficking and abuse conduct by paying large sums of money to participant witnesses, including by paying for their attorney fees and case costs in litigation related to this conduct. Now, I might have to ask the government, what part of national security is this the reason for the redaction? Now, of course, I started this video off without a hello, guys and gals, because I think that it was important that I capture you guys in the first second of this video to show you how shitty of a redaction job that was happening. You might be like, whoa, Muta, how the hell is this possible? Could you do this with any file? The reality is, if you get lucky, this is the showcase of how poorly the US government is actually doing this cover-up. These are not redacted files. They're redacted visually, but thankfully, because text is not just a black box on a document, you can just highlight, copy, paste it into a text document. Hell, you can even throw it into some artificial intelligence and have it read sections for you. It's crazy stuff we're dealing with. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is probably one of the worst cover-ups that I've seen. Now, in the last couple days, I talked about files disappearing from the Epstein files, right? Like, yesterday there was like this image that we saw, which was actually removed for, very briefly, and then it was brought back once people started to give backlash to the government. Like, why would you remove these images? And the reality of it is that they were actually never really removed. They were actually mostly de-indexed. But to give you guys an idea, to understand, they were actually never really even blocked. For instance, when it came to certain files, all it really took anybody to do was to just open up the actual URL entry for their browser, go in, to this section where it's EFTA, and of course, as long as it's part of the similar data set, like this is in dataset 8, it could be in 7, 6, 5, yada yada, change these numbers around and you can access material that the government has de-indexed from the search engine on the website. So yeah, this does not involve crazy hacker trickery. No, there is no breaking into the fucking matrix. It's just a terrible job done by one of the most incompetent fucking administrations that I've ever actually seen in my lifetime. Man, if Watergate happened today, I would love to see the technical fuck-ups happen right before our very eyes. But anyways, this is not the focal point of the story. There's actually been a lot of drops regarding Jeffrey Epstein. When you go to any of these data sets under Justice.gov, Epstein Library, DOJ disclosures, you can actually download all of these data sets as they come out. So you can download the zip file. Now, you should typically do this as soon as these files drop, because one thing you can do with the zip folder is you can actually run a command known as zipinfo. Now, underneath this command, you can actually see exactly a manifest of every single file. Basically, instead of opening up and decompressing the entire thing, you can just see what sits inside. So if the government starts removing files, you can cross-reference with yourself and see which files were removed and which files are allowed to stay up. And of course, ultimately, at the end of the day, with a lot of the redactions poorly made, one could grab these files and remove the redactions themselves, provided, the government was sloppy, and be able to view things that could reveal, individuals. Now, ultimately, I do have to say that because of the victims in this situation, unfortunately, they're also thrown into the crosshairs too, because a poor redaction job does unfortunately go both ways. Now, there's a great website called jmail.world, and I believe this was made by Dropsite News, and I think Coffee also actually worked on it too. But if you look inside this, you can see that there's various volumes of documents that one can flip through. And they've kind of got a Google Drive / Gmail style to it, because ultimately you are just looking at Jeffrey Epstein's vacation Gmail account. So here you can actually search for a document text. You can actually open up all of these files, which they have 36,000 files on. It's crazy when you think about it. The average person is storing the information and archiving it better than the fucking government, who is ordered by law to legally be transparent. But we all know that transparency isn't really a thing regarding the story, okay? But ultimately, anybody can open these documents up, and you can just sort of look around and see new things that have sort of dropped in. Now, inside a lot of these things, inside a lot of these files, for instance, this video clip right over here from the inside of a detention center, you can actually see that there's a description provided. So here is a video showing two corrections officers in prison corridor. One officer stops at cell door U9S, J tier 114 on the left, manipulating the locks, leaning against the walls. You get it. So obviously there are descriptions, there are mentions, and yada 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 relating to all of this. So while there's a lot of new mentions of President Trump and some of this stuff, you can see that obviously the DOJ has also stressed to the people that the documents, some documents are unverified, there are anomalies in envelopes, yada yada yada. And that in some of these documents, you'll have untrue and sensationalist claims. You know, I love how they said that only about the president, not about anybody else, maybe even the victims in this case too. So it's just crazy to see where the actual like objectives lie in this case, right? So one of the darkest things that I've sort of seen regarding the situation is one file from the newly released data set, which actually has a lot of new information. I think around 11,000 different files. So there's a lot of stuff to look through. One of the actual, posts was EFTA 00020517.pdf. Now we're going to kind of read through this because it's an insane FBI intake document right over here. So of course, according to this, they have a fair bit of redactions, but understandably, you don't really need the redactions to understand how disgusting this stuff can be. So reported around 1997, he made contact with blank, date of birth blank, whom he had known for 6-7 years prior as they had a son together. Blank and blank ended up dating as blank explained she was having money issues and problems with her daughters. Blank noted they were friends from before. During this contact in 97, blank asked blank how to speak Ghislaine numerous times. As blank noted, she had taken her daughters up to see one of the supposed fathers who lived in Niagara Falls, New York State, recently. Blank reported she had met a lady who invited her daughters blank, date of birth blank, and date of birth blank to a fancy hotel and met Donald Trump, and some of the friends in 1997. Blank continued asking blank how to spell Ghislaine, implying Ghislaine had given her money and would give her additional money if needed. On Christmas Eve of 99, or the day prior, blank was over visiting his son who he had with blank years prior. Blank began asking to blank as she seemed to be acting strange and asked blank if he needed a ride home. Blank asked blank about this time driving a limousine for 2 years in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. During blank's time as a driver, he had met Donald Trump. Blank had noted he picked the president up in 95 and took him to Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. Blank had reported some of the things President Trump had spoken about during the ride while on his cell phone, which were very concerning. Blank reported he was a few seconds from pulling the limousine over on the median and within a few seconds of pulling him out of the car and hurting him due to some of the things he was saying. As caller choose not to, Blank noted Trump continuously stated the name Jeffrey while on the phone and made references to abusing some girl. Blank was unsure who he was talking to nor what he was referencing. As Blank talked about his time meeting Donald Trump, Blank immediately blank demeanor meant stone cold. As Blank stated, "He raped me." Blank said what as blank replied, DJ Trump had raped him alongside with Jeffrey Epstein. Blank noted some girl with a funny name, took me to a funny hotel or building, and that's how it happened. Blank advised blank to call the police regarding the incident as blank stated, "I can't, they will kill me," on Christmas Day. Blank contacted blank stating she had in fact called the police about what they talked about. Blank told blank she had done good. Blank did not hear from blank or blank until January 10, 2000. Again, I'm sorry for the constant blanking. It's just very redacted. So blank reached out to blank stating blank was dead and noted she was found with her head blown off in Kiefer, Oklahoma. Officers on the scene blank stated that it was no way it was a suicide. Coroner said it was. Blank later stated blank committed because blank had gotten cocaine from a Mexican drug cartel. Blank feels the murder is a cover for Ghislaine. The last contact with blank was after blank posted this information on Facebook a couple of weeks prior. Blank called blank yelling that he had put the family in danger. Blank explained blank had a third daughter named blank, date of birth. So yeah, this is an insane FBI like unclassified document brought into this entire mix, right? And ultimately, this comes from justice.gov. And from my understanding, I don't think the FBI publishes its case information. It's not like I can go onto like a Pacer and pull this, but they do have a case number provided. And, it's something that obviously the FBI can probably explain in a much more succinct state. But as you can see, this happened back in 2020. And yeah, it's an insane situation to witness. Now remember, these are like FBI like tip forms, right? And this is the first time any of us in the public are able to actually see these for what they are. But again, this is just another one that was brought in. And again, one can argue that maybe these were obviously bullshit. They were never really acted upon. But, it's just interesting reading as it was released in this situation. So here's one where they talk about Mar-a-Lago. So after Blank and Villeneuve left the hospital, they remained friends. Later that year in 2000, around Christmas time, Villeneuve invited to a party on Palm Beach Island, Florida. Blank believes the house belongs to Epstein, but the part Villeneuve took Blank to meet Bobby Cox. Cox was a young man who introduced himself as a model scout. And Villeneuve laughed in response to Cox's introduction and said, "No, you're a pimp." Villeneuve, Cox, and Blank then went to a party. They entered the property through the backyard, and Villeneuve said that they would go to speak with the hostess, which Blank believes was Ghislaine Maxwell. When Villeneuve took Blank inside, Villeneuve told Blank to stay close and not go into any of the rooms. Villeneuve took Blank to meet a man named Kurt Schmidt, who was currently the CEO of Blue Buffalo. When Villeneuve and Blank approached Schmidt, he asked Villeneuve if Blank was cool. So Blank stated she was cool. Villeneuve said no, he means cool to have sex. Schmidt said no, he meant cocaine. Villeneuve took Blank back inside, and someone told the party that Donald Trump had invited them all to a party at Mar-a-Lago. Blank told Villeneuve she wanted to go. Villeneuve said Blank, it wasn't that kind of party, it was for prostitutes. So this is where they're implying that a party at Mar-a-Lago, which was, Trump's place, still is, that was a party with prostitution and everything. So again, these were FBI tip reports that had ended up coming out in this pace. But yeah, it's fucking crazy to see. So one thing that I found really interesting, remember, we have such a wild roller coaster with the Epstein files. Like, for a while, you had the top cop in the country looking at tons of videos of like, adults abusing minors. And then all of a sudden, this became like a huge Democrat hoax. And now all of a sudden, we're getting a lot of files that, I guess, didn't exist for a while, right? So in EFTA 00038487.pdf, when it comes to things like co-conspirators, right? It's interesting when we kind of go down this road, so I want to read this for you, right? So of the 10 co-conspirators, 3 have been located in Florida and served JG subpoenas. 1 in Boston, 1 in New York City, and 1 in Connecticut were located and served. 4 out of the 10 are outstanding, with attempts having been made. 1 is a wealthy businessman in Ohio. A lead is being sent to CV. The remaining 3 are currently out of pocket. The team, 8 SAs, TFOs, 2 AUSAs, are flying out tonight tomorrow to various locations in Florida to interview approximately 25 victims. So they've got a tip line. We've received approximately 45 calls, which we are in the process of vetting out. Let me know if you need anything. And of course, when you go down over here, you can see that in the follow-up, good morning, ASC is requesting an update on the 10 co-conspirators. Can you tell us how many have been successfully located, interviewed, served with JGS? I believe the breakdown was 5 in New York, 1 in North Carolina, 1 in Boston, 3 in Florida. And this is from the Crimes Against Children's Human Trafficking Unit, so COSH2. Now, again, this is a email that is done, like this is literally, this is, again, federal agencies, serious federal agencies talking about this entire situation. So, it's interesting to me when I kind of read more and look at the previous statements, and I might have to re-look into like Kash Patel, but he said something about like there was no credible evidence. Like, again, Epstein was like trafficking people. I'd have to really re-listen to that quote again, because again, when you read these kind of emails and you start to see this new information come out, it's like the confirmation that this was so far and deep and like penetrated into like elite society is more confirmed day by day as these files release. And again, it's important that we kind of talk about these files and keep pressure up, because it really is one of the things that's making the elite squirm around us, right? Like there are, I don't want to get hyperbolic, but we live in a society now, I feel, with the release of these files, that we can verifiably say that the people that govern us are the people that harm our children the most, right? They're the people that harm the most innocent in society. And if you want to live in a normal society, you don't enable that fucking behavior. You know, I think it was like there was like a Colombian like general that once said this kind of shit too. It's like when you live in a society, I think the quote was like when you live in a society uh, that doesn't have peace, right? That doesn't have like when you don't have things like the rule of law, there is no peace. There is no like living like a normal person. There's no life to be had there. You know, we should not be allowing people that run our worlds, that run our governments to be involved in sick, demented shit like this. You know, when a fucking YouTuber, and that's very low stakes in compared to people running the world, gets caught, we excise them from the community. We don't interact with them. You know, we did that shit to like people like EDP 445. I mean, crazy comparison, I know, but when you got people that run the world, right? People that are making big decisions for us, those are not people that should be allowed. In a normal world, right? These files would not be released very piecemeal like this, very poorly handled. You know, the thing is, no matter who you are, if you are involved in the harming of minors, you should absolutely be tried, sent to prison, maybe fucking giving the death penalty if you just break in the law, right? Like that's where I stand. But obviously, it's a debate worth having. The thing about this whole situation is if people are guilty, it doesn't matter what side people are on, it doesn't matter. You should just seek justice in that case, right? People should just be willing to come together to seek the justice against sick, depraved people like Epstein and whoever his co-conspirators in this case are, right? Ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and yeah, the Epstein stuff gets more and more troubling as it comes out. The stuff that's come out very recently, some of these FBI tips, some of these, like, and again, some of this stuff is very much unverified simply because the FBI is publishing everything in their or rather the DOJ is publishing everything in their possession, and some of that stuff does come with unverified stuff. But I think it's interesting we're getting this. I think I think I'd rather get it unverified. I think I'd rather just get the whole tranche and be able to look through and verify things for myself, which it seems like plenty of people have been doing. Lots of YouTubers, lots of really just YouTubers. I feel like when it comes to the mainstream media, they've absolutely been dropping the fucking ball in certain cases like this. But when it comes to the independent researcher, the independent journalist, the YouTuber, everyone's been doing a fucking bang up job on that. But ladies and gentlemen, that was a Epstein file, dataset 8, and I'm sure there's more to come, and I'm sure I'm not going to be stopping talking about this because I feel like every time and the reason I started this video off with like showing you the redaction stuff is this might be one of the most poorest cover-ups that I've ever seen in history. And it's worth literally sharing with the audience how bad it is because it just doesn't stop. You know, the government keeps showing how incompetent they are, and because of their incompetence, people are more Streisand affected than ever before. So ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.